Here we go. Hey, everybody. Mike Anderson is here with me now. Mike is the legend of the industry. He is the beating heart of the industry. And I feel very honored to have Mike kind of fill us in on what's happening out there in the industry. I know we're still fairly early stage here, but what is the vibe, the beat that you're feeling from everybody in the field, the shops that you talk to every day, Mike?
Ryan, first of all, thanks for, having me on this webinar or podcast, whatever you want to call this, right? And, fortunately, I get a chance to talk and work with a lot of shops across the USA and Canada. And, I talked to Bob McSherry this morning. I mean, he's still got work. He's up in North Haven, Connecticut. He's still got work. He seems to be doing well. Obviously, he's got some concerns if he'll be able to get parts, depending on what happens. Last night in the news, it talked about United Auto Workers maybe shutting down some of the manufacturing plants. I talked to Ryan Cropper up in Alaska. They seem to have a ton of work right now. They seem to be really, really busy. Matt McDonald in Big Sky, Montana. He seems to be really busy. Got an email from Sam Zamir, Collision Consultants out in California. He says they've actually picked up. He said a lot of people, because they're like, I don't need my car right now. Right now is the best time to get it fixed. So, I do think ultimately at some point, depending on how long this lasts, that could start to impact people in a negative way. But, I don't think we've gotten to the tough pain point yet, so shops right now still have some work they're working through, and I think the biggest question is going to be parts availability. That's what remains to be seen. But so far I think people are hunkered down, and it's body shops, man. What's the saying, like at the end of the world there'll be two things left: cockroaches and body shops, right? And
Yeah.
Most of the body shop owners,
right?
yeah, most of the body shop owners I work with, they're pretty resilient, and it sounds like people are keeping their head above water, and I'm glad to hear that.
So one of the things that we try to look to is, customers' behaviors. What are you hearing from the shops? What are their customers starting to think? Obviously, there's a lot of quarantines. There's a lot of people driving less miles. The instinctive fear is that less miles driven means less accidents. What are you seeing in the early stages? What are you predicting? And I know it's like asking you to look into a crystal ball, but what are you predicting for the future in the midterm?
Yeah, I think I think we'd all be naive if we didn't believe that at some point, people are driving less. I mean, I haven't been out on the roads, but you watch the news, whatever, and people are driving less. I mean, they're showing empty intersections, right? So I think at some point accidents, absolutely, it's going to impact everybody, right? It's just maybe it's taking a little while for it to get there. Shops have work in queue right now that were there previously, but I think at some point we're going to see kind of like a big drop off, right? So I think it's inevitable, right? Unless you're in an area that's had hail or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like Montana or weather out in Alaska, where they've got a big backlog. But I think the average state, they're going to see things. That at some point it's going to hit us. It's going to come to a dead halt, right?
So
I think we have to prepare for that and turn it into a positive.
Yeah. So what would you do in the meantime? Obviously, we're working through the backlog. Would you advise shops to reach out to customers? What would you advise them to do right now to secure future work if there is to be a decline in repair volume?
So I think number one is capture rate. I've been talking about capture rate even before this even happened, right? As claims counts decline because of ADAS, even if it's 1 or 2%, I think that we have to focus on capture rate. If you're a DRP and you get an assignment, you got to be more aggressive in following up on that and getting that customer scheduled in. I think we have to have a way for people to contact us outside of normal business hours, and that's take the coronavirus out of it, right? I think, what's the saying, 36% of all people need our services outside of normal business hours. Matter of fact, I did a study recently, and the majority of car accidents happen on a Saturday. Friday's the second day, and Sunday's the third day. So if you look at the 2 days when car accidents happen the most, we're generally closed, right? So, I think that we have to have ways for customers to contact and reach out to us after hours. If you've got a Google business listing page, make sure you have the ability for a customer to text you there. You got to have ability for somebody to reach you through your website after hours, whether it's schedule an appointment or book an appointment. I know a lot of people use CCC1's book an appointment feature, and obviously I know you have the product Body Shop Booster, but photo estimating, I know there's a lot of debate in the market, about you can't write an estimate by a photo, and I get that, but I think that you don't look at it as trying to settle a $20,000 claim by photo, but instead we're using it as a marketing strategy, right? So I think we have to be available when people are. I think that we have to make sure we have best practices in place that, we track if a customer, we write an estimate, and they don't schedule an appointment, that we've got a good follow-up procedure. I have a large client I worked with, and what we found was that if we called the customer the day after we wrote the estimate, if they didn't schedule an appointment, that we captured 20% of the people that had not committed. And then if we called 3 days out, we captured more. And then, 5 days out more. And after that, you kind of write it off. But I think we just got to be more proactive on that. And again, taking coronavirus out of it, which is a very challenging time for all of us. That's just a good practice for business, period, especially as claims decline because of ADAS.
Yeah, and we look at that. I think from what we're seeing in our perspective is follow up will be the key. The new battleground is a lot of customers are scared to come to the shops. We're getting more and more. We've been inundated ourselves with people wanting the ability to do virtual estimates, and whether they use us or they have the customer try and send photos through a different medium. What's going to happen that we kind of see the new battleground, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the new battleground is that customer is now getting an estimate for maybe multiple shops, and they're trying to make an informed decision remotely. They've never had any personal interaction. They've never got to see your showroom. How are you selling that person? And that's the new battleground. So follow up.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it boils down to that first conversation we have with the customer. There's, whether it's, and that term ZMOT, right? Zero moment of truth. So if they go to our website, what are we doing to promote that we are competent? So I believe that competence builds confidence in our brand. So how do I articulate or communicate to someone that I'm competent? Well, that's through my OEM certifications, right? That, there's 300 shops in my state and only 3 have met the training and equipment requirements to be OEM certified. And I've met those training equipment requirements. And then as I learned from you, that they've had advanced training, right? And I think we have to communicate that message, whether it's on our website, it's a Google business listing, or if it's when we make that phone call. Ryan, you've been in several of my seminars. Recently, you and I were at a very large OEM certification conference, and I brought 3 people up on stage, and I called all three people's shops, and I said, hey, my name is Mike, and I've got this type of vehicle and this insurance company. What should I do? And what we always do is we go down the whole path and we start talking about the insurance process, right? Well, look, we're not a direct repair shop for them because we focus on your best interest, and they may try to get you to go somewhere else. Or you get the DRP shop that says, hey, all you need to do is get an assignment sent to us. And what we're doing is we're not communicating that we are competent, right? And so when you think about when a person has an accident, what emotions are they feeling, right? They're anxious, they're stressed, they're concerned they don't have the money, they're frustrated, they've heard their car will never be the same. So the question is, what is our word track, or what is the message we're sending through social media that convinces that person to be less anxious, less stressed, less concerned, whatever that case may be? And I think that is by articulating and sending a message of our competence. And our competence is that if we have an OEM certification, we're one of a select few shops. And here's why: because we met the training equipment requirements and we've had advanced training on that brand. So I know I said that 3 or 4 times, but just because I'm passionate about it.
You're driving the point home. I love it. I think it's smart. So one of the things that we kind of see is obviously people hoarding toilet paper. That's an effect of what we.
That's great. So I have a confession to make because my soul won't bear it anymore. I was coming back from your country in Canada on Saturday, and I stole a whole roll of toilet paper out of my hotel room and put it in my suitcase. And all I could think about was customs going through my suitcase. I get stopped at the border for a roll of toilet paper. I'm so sorry. Jesus,
you started it. I mean, there's no toilet paper here anymore. It's your fault. You started it.
Man.
I love it.
Yeah, it's crazy. People hoarding toilet paper. I'm like, are you kidding me, man? I mean, it's just insane.
We find that as a derivative of scarcity. They see that toilet paper is getting a rush, and they're like, I better do it now. So we want to, scarcity is a powerful trigger that you and I have talked about a lot,
yes.
But it can actually be used to their advantage at the shop. One of the things we often talk about is how do you get motivated, or how do you motivate customers to want to deal with a shop? Well, we talked about, what about using even this current situation to their advantage? We don't know what's going to happen with part supply. We know we can get your parts now. We should get this in, like creating a sense of urgency and scarcity to get that customer motivated. Any thoughts around that piece of it?
Yeah. So every shop that I've talked with, and again, I've got probably, I've got about 360 some personal clients that I deal with through Exalted Coding Systems and their 20 groups, right? And then I got clients outside of that as well with the OEM manufacturers that I'm blessed to work with. And most shops I've worked with, they are absolutely pre-ordering parts. So like if they got cars coming in 2 or 3 weeks, they're pre-ordering the parts now because they feel like they want to get their ticket in line, right?
Yeah.
So the lines is so. Is that hoarding? I don't necessarily know if that's hoarding. I think that if they have a car coming in, they need the part. So I don't necessarily think that's hoarding. I think it's just smart business. And I would encourage anybody that if you've got cars scheduled on the books, but you also have to balance that, right? Because it's cash flow. If you've got the cash to sustain paying for all these parts, and the car doesn't come in for 6 or 8 weeks, then hey, that's good for you. But for some shops, they don't necessarily have the cash reserves to do that. And if that's the case, maybe they can only order parts, 1 or 2 weeks out. Personally, I tell you, the biggest challenge I'm hearing from shops right now is not about not having work. It's not about parts. It's about childcare, man. That is the biggest thing I'm hearing from people is
Right.
that,
All the
with all
schools
these
are out.
schools,
Yeah.
yeah, with all the schools closed and you have a husband and wife both work, well, it's not just the one parent's duty to stay home with the kids. So they have to alternate, right? And so if that's the case, I'm seeing some shops are like allowing the technicians to come in at night so
Right.
they can watch their kids during the day.
Mhm.
I'm seeing some businesses are allowing the kids to come to work with them. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, right? But I think if you have them come to work with the parents, totally get it. But I think you got to set some parameters up around that, right?
Yep.
Maybe the kids have to stay in a certain area of the office or
Or
things like
no,
that.
no more aggressive than 80 grit when they're
Yeah,
saying,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
wait, is
You
that
got
child labor? Did I go there? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. And I know some people, I know one business, he was offering childcare for his employees, right? And
Smart.
again, I mean, I think that people are having to think outside the box, but honestly, it doesn't sound like lack of work is not yet become an issue. I think it will be soon, right? So hunker down, right? And so far, parts availability seems to be pretty decent. I have heard of a couple of dealerships, maybe having to close down. But from what I understand, I know like in San Francisco, they send out a letter to businesses and they considered automotive repair businesses an essential business. So they
Right.
did not have to close, right? So I think it's more about childcare is what everybody seems to work with. I also got a phone call the other day from a shop that said, hey, we can't get any dust mask or anything. Do you know anybody at 3M you can reach out to? And I
Yeah.
know 3M has like a toll-free number or something you can call for things like that. So that seems to be some of the issues right now that are concerning people.
Yeah, and that's helpful. The childcare thing, of course, would be a challenging thing. So, um, one of the other things that we were talking about inside of the getting gas masks and dust masks has kind of prompted the thoughts. But if parts do become a problem and supply chain gets interrupted a bit, what can shops do? I'm talking repair versus replace. Any ideas around some things that they could pre-game for, or just have a contingency plan if parts of the supply chain does get interrupted?
Um, and I'm going to get some haters out there. I'm sorry, but I'm just not a big aftermarket parts fan, right? So
Yeah.
I just think put it on an aftermarket part that may not have the same criteria as an OEM part is just as bad as, maybe fixing a part that should be repaired. And that's no disrespect to anybody, right? Just my personal thoughts, right? So, but I'm sure that some people will consider alternative parts usage. Again, not saying it's right or wrong. It's a business decision they make. I think if you're going to repair parts and you choose to repair it, I would say that you really need to take four things into consideration. Number one is you have to ask yourself, number one, if you repair the part, is the part still going to be make the vehicle safe, right? So like you don't want to be repairing a bumper cover if it has a blind spot monitor behind it. So to me, and I learned this from BTAC Flatliner, Dave Flockhart and Ralph, right? So
Good folks.
basically, if you're going to choose to repair a part, it has to meet four criteria. Number one is, will the vehicle still be safe?
Mhm.
Number two is, will the part still be functional? Number three, will the part still be durable? And number four, will it still be aesthetically pleasing? So, if it's a bumper cover and there's a blind spot monitor behind it, I can't fix that. It's not a safe repair, right? If there's a bumper cover, I'm gonna repair it, and the blind spot monitor may not work with it, it may not be functional, right? And
Mhm.
then durability, would it hold up if I repair this part? Is it going to hold up down the road? Well, if it's like a plastic type of repair, will it, get damaged or whatever, or will cause corrosion? And then is it aesthetically pleasing? Now that aesthetically pleasing piece may be something where if a customer came in and I had to use like a nitrogen welder to maybe, nitrogen weld something just to get them back on the road with the understanding I'll bring them back in and put a new part on it later. Well, that's a whole different deal, right? So I do think shops can look at some repair versus replace options, right? I mean, right, wrong, or indifferent. You see a lot of shops. What their motto is that if they're busy, they replace a lot of parts. If they're slow, they tend to repair more. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just the reality, right?
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, I think whether you're busy or slow, it always should have to meet those four criteria. And that is it going to be a safe repair? Is it going to be functional? Is the part still going to be durable? And is it still aesthetically going to look great? And I think if you can do those, then repair versus replace may be an option.
I like it. Yeah, no, I think that's some solid advice there. So what else can a shop do during this downtime, whether it's, working on things in the back. I know before we went online, you were talking about some spring cleaning concepts at the shop. What can shops do now?
Yeah, I
If
mean,
they
I
do?
think Yeah, I mean, I think, at least when I had my shops, right, one of the things I would do is, we cleaned our spray booths every quarter. We
Right.
go through and we clean them and change the filters, et cetera. Use this downtime to, keep your employees busy and go ahead and get your spray booth, maintenance. Maybe go through and do maintenance on your compressors. Maybe, spring and summer's around the corner. If you're going to do maintenance on your, HVAC system, go ahead and do that. If there's any walls you want to get painted, do that. We all have those parts that a vehicle was a total loss and we still have the old bumpers out back or whatever. Go through and 5S and clean all those away. 5S, clean your shop. I mean, use this time to do that. Go into your management system. Number one is if things slow down, cash is going to be tight. Start checking to make sure you received all your credit memos, right? That's free money. Make sure you could start chasing your receivables now so you can get that money in. Go through your management system and maybe you got a lot of old data that needs to be cleaned up. I mean, I hope to gosh that you're closing every RO when the car leaves, but if not, and you got all these open ROs, go through there and close all those out. So do like an electronic cleanup, go through your management system, your accounting system, all of that. Again, 5S your shop, clean that out. Now's a great time to do some training, right? I mean, I hear a lot of people complaining right now that, iCar changed some roles and they got more training they have to take. Now's the time to get your employees taking those iCar classes. Jeff Peavy, who at AMI, Automotive Management Institute, has a lot of training options. 3M has a lot of great videos on their website. Kristen Felder, Collision Hub, she has a ton of videos, man. I think I saw her post on the other day. She's got like 100 videos, right? Go through and watch those videos.
Now's the time
You
to
know,
dive in.
yeah, exactly. I think most of your management systems like CCC or Mitchell, they probably have some online videos. I know CCC's got a really great library of training videos. So take the time to train now, right? If you have an employee that's kind of weak in one area, see if we can start to coach them up. So I think training, shop cleanup, and 5S. Employee reviews. I highly recommend employee reviews. I mean, maybe you got busy and you couldn't do them last year. Maybe now's the time to sit down and do an employee review. But I think those things don't necessarily make us money, but what they do is they set us so we have a solid foundation in our culture so that when we do pick up and get busy again, we can hit the road running.
Yeah, because what you don't want to do is scale too far down. Then when the recovery comes, it's hard to scale back up again. Is
Yeah.
kind of the goal, right? So
I mean, I know a lot of people are going to be faced with the task of like, do I have to let people go?
right,
Well, I mean, you have to look at the financial consequence. If you let them go and then you get busy, you got to hire somebody again and train them. So what's the lesser of two evils? You know what I mean? Now, I mean, at some point, if this dragged on for 6 months or a year, you couldn't keep everybody. But I would encourage everybody, try to keep your people employed. I mean, honestly, if I'm an employee, how my employer treats me now is going to send big messages to me, right?
right, yeah,
If I'm an employee, I want to work for a business that's going to be around for even during the difficult times. So it's a great way to see, what your character is, right, of the employer and the employee, right? If you're an employee and you're listening to this, maybe your employee can't guarantee your salary, what you're used to making if things slow down. But if they give you something, that's better than nothing. So, I
yeah.
mean, give credit to both sides, right?
Yeah, and work with your employees and be transparent probably with them and say,
Yes,
look, we're in hard times. This isn't a choice, but we need to work together to weather the storm. So, absolutely, I think a lot of right now is where leadership is really going to shine.
I
So,
agree.
yeah,
I
so
agree.
that's pretty cool. What other things?
What was interesting to me is I've been, I mean, because of my involvement in the industry, I've worked with a lot of different entities. And if you look, car sales in China have dropped 80%, right?
80%.
80%. Yeah. If you go online, search that, you'll see it. Not that everything online is true, but, from credible resources like CNN and Bloomberg News and Wall Street Journal, new car sales in China have dropped 80%. A gentleman shared that with me yesterday, and I went online to research it, and it's absolutely true. And so you think about if new car sales drop off, you saw General Motors, they offered, I think it's GM now, offered 0% financing. But if new car sales drop off, that means people are going to take and fix their existing cars, right? So, this could end up being good in the long run. It could actually turn a positive for us. I'm not saying it will. I certainly am no industry pundit that knows economic affairs, but I'm trying to find some positiveness in this,
Yeah,
right?
no, and it's you got to figure out how to leverage this to your advantage, whether you're using this time for improving your skill set, whether you're using this time to, approach past customers. We always talk it's 70 times more expensive to go acquire a new customer than just engage a past one. So reaching out to your existing customer base. And we know the service drives are full of vehicles. There's a big honeypot of small to mid-sized damage that people have been deferring, and now they got time to
Yes.
deal with it. So in other segments, we're going to talk about how to unlock those people from not getting their vehicle fixed. Now they've got time. Let's leverage that to the
Well,
shop.
again, that's what Sam Zamir was telling me out in California, is that people are like, I don't need my car now. I don't have to go to work, so I'm going to get it fixed. So there may be some people that have the money. I'm not saying that's the average American, but now may be the time that they want to get their car fixed, right? Especially if they're home and they don't need, transportation. So I don't know what percentage of the population that is, but I think those opportunities absolutely exist. I think especially if you're in a dealership world and a car's in for service already, and maybe they're already in like a loaner car or rental car or something, I think there's some things you can do there, right? For most shops I've talked to, that what they're doing is they're promoting photo-based estimating, right, as a way to try to write an estimate for the customer because the customer may be worried about contact. They're reassuring the customer that they can do free pickup and delivery. So I mean, you see a lot of shops getting pretty aggressive. It's pretty interesting to talk to people and hear what they're doing and read what they're doing, and I think some good ideas will come out of this for our industry.
I think we've had some folks talking about working remotely, and is there any tips, tricks that, like, if the staff, because we look at staffing maybe having to scale down, but what about staff getting sick or having to take care of kids? Are some things that they can do to work remotely? Systems that they can they run CCC from their home? Can they run can they do some kind of admin work from home? And what thoughts would you have around that?
Yeah, from what I understand, like using CCC as an example, you can, as long as you have access to internet, you can write an estimate and you can go into a management system, right?
Yeah.
I think even if you have access to the internet, you download an estimate profile or template for a specific OEM, and then even if you don't have access to the internet, you can still write the estimate and then finish it when you get back. But as far as I know, I mean, yeah, you can use a lot of these systems. Again, speaking about CCC remotely, right?
Yeah.
I just don't know. Unfortunately, the biggest part of our industry is technicians, right? And which can't be done remotely, and that's the biggest challenge, right? Is you got to have them in there. Are there things we can do remotely? Yes. I mean, I think it's probably some of the administrative work. Maybe it's somebody can answer phones and you have your phones rerouted. But I think it's probably easier for insurance carriers to work remotely right now than it is for collision repairers. I just don't think there's a whole lot we can do remotely, except for the estimating portion, right? With a communication with the customer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, we have a virtual estimating team that will literally, take the photos, log into the
Right.
system and write the estimate. We've had a huge rush on that because people are like, wow, my estimator's out sick. I need a way to deal. And whether you use a system like that or you do it yourselves, whatever you can do. And again, that's going to help to social distance and also help maybe with the childcare thing a little
Yes.
bit. But you're right. You're making money when there's hands on the vehicle, and that's in the shop setting. So, I would never recommend taking the car to your house to fix a customer's car, but yes,
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah.
Some very interesting times. And what other things am I not thinking about, Mike? What other things would be helpful for shops that I can?
I think I think that everybody has to look at just cash reserves, right? We always say that a really good solid business has 6 months of cash reserves. That's really a sign of a healthy business, right?
Right.
And I learned that when I was in the Coyote Vision Group at Elena Satchery, is that if you had 6 months of operating expense cash in the bank, you're a really solid business, right? And so I think that there'll probably be some lessons learned here, some painful lessons from people.
Sure.
It may be painful for you, it may be tough to get through it, but let it just, what's the saying? If you make a mistake, it's not a mistake. If you learn from it, it becomes a life lesson. So if you get through this, learn to understand your financials, learn how to manage cash flow. I think there's nice to have expenses and there's must have expenses. And, if things start getting tight, go through and look at your must have expenses versus your nice to have, right? And you may have to get some of those nice to have expenses and you may have to get rid of them, right? I certainly don't want to see anybody lose their job. But if it drug down and you had to do that, make sure you think about the people that were loyal to you and that stayed extra to get that car out for you and things of that nature. But I think it's really just managing cash flow. From what I understand, the government has, a lot of the stimulus money they're having is making it easy for businesses to get small loans. I think they said the interest rate is going to be around 2%, which is really a great interest rate. So I think there'll be some credit lines out there. I can tell you me personally, and I've got 6 employees, right? So think about my company, Collision Vice. We're not making money if we're not traveling. If I'm
Right.
not on the road doing a seminar or speaking, working with shop doing 20 group, I'm making no money. And I've got 6 employees and we have zero income coming in, and everything I have has been canceled. And I'm not complaining by any means, but I'm using this time to get my employees to work on projects and let us figure out what we can do once this breaks free. But I have my own bank reached out to me and said, "Hey, we know what the nature of your business is, and if you need a credit line or something, we've got it there for you." Unfortunately, I try to be pretty risk averse and manage my finances responsibly, so I don't have to take my bank up on that. But it was nice that my bank reached out to me, right? So if you feel like you're in some cash flow type positions, reach out to your business banking institution and see what type of credit line options are available for you, right? I think the sad part is I think you're probably going to see some shops go out of business if this drags out. Now, should those shops go out of business anyway, because maybe they're not doing safe and proper repairs, that might be something. But all I can say is if there's a shop that's struggling or feels like financially that they're not sure how to get a loan with a bank, I'm willing to offer my time for free to anybody. If anybody wants a webinar, you want some training on something, and I'll offer it for free. Just let me know. Just want to help people and get through this, and we'll be good to go.
Well, man, that is very generous, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of folks that want to hear more as the situation unravels. Things seem to be so dynamic and changing by the moment. There's somebody was saying that they're thinking about National Guard being called out
Yeah,
in
they've actually called out the National Guard in our area. So all in, I live in Maryland, and my assistant Tiffany and my teammate Tracy, they live in Virginia, and they've closed all schools. They're talking about canceling all the schools for the rest of the year here, which would be really surprising, right? But they're talking about canceling all schools. The bars and all bars and restaurants are closed, all bars, and the restaurants are open only for delivery or takeout. So nobody can congregate in there. Some of the grocery stores are, which I think is a great idea. They're allowing people to open up like an hour early just for senior citizens or elderly. I mean, my dad's 83 years old. I don't want him. First of all, if he needs something, I'm gonna go get it for him. But they're trying to, cater to the elderly that they can come in an hour with anybody else. Some of the grocery stores in Virginia are also limiting how many people can be in the grocery store at one given time. And I think it's like 10. They also put some things in place to prevent hoarding, where you can only buy like 4 of anything, right? That's it. So, I think people kind of overreacted in the beginning, and I think people are starting to settle down a little bit now, and some common sense is starting to prevail, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we'll see that people get used to the new normal. The thing I do love about our industry is it does have a tendency to be a little recession proof. People need transportation. I
Yes.
was talking to an economist yesterday, and they were saying, well, we call it the cabin fever effect. So people, yeah, they'll quarantine themselves. But the concern of epidemiologists and other folks is that after a while, they're like, I've been trapped in my house for 10 days. I'm getting out on the road. And they start roaming around and really, what a lot of people what they're anticipating is a lot of people will be driving around. So
Yeah.
maybe volume on the road will pick up in a little bit, and accidents will pick up, and but the nice thing is the insurance companies are footing for the most part most of the bill. And
Yes.
obviously the customer has the deductible portion, but that does help us be a little recession proof. Is there any advice around helping customers with deductible financing?
Yeah, it's funny. I've had some companies reach out to me, or body shops, I would say clients, and ask me about deductible financing. I reached out to Aaron Schulenberg at SCRS to see if maybe they had a relationship with someone. I believe ASA, if you remember them, they may have a relationship with someone. Some people are using GE Capital.
Okay.
So there are companies out there that offer, financing for not just the deductible, but the entire repair, right? And you basically get paid. And most of them offer what's called 90 days, same as cash. So what happens is if the customer pays it off in 90 days, there's 0% interest rate. And then you just get charged like a credit card fee and you get paid your whole amount. So there are companies out there. Again, G Capital is one. I would encourage you to reach out to SCRS, Aaron Schulenberg or ASA, and Ray Fisher, and see if maybe they've got some preferred vendors that they use for that. But I
Yeah.
think there's some options out there on that.
Excellent. I think that would be helpful. And some shops are talking about maybe, and I think it varies by jurisdiction, but maybe appearance allowances or doing
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you have to check with the insurance company. Most insurance companies are going to be okay if you can offer an appearance allowance on something. And I think you just need to, if it's an insurance company that's, paying for the claim for the consumer on behalf of the consumer, I think it's important you just make sure everybody's on the same page so nothing's miscommunicated. But if there's something that maybe has a minor scuff and they can live with it, and you can offer appearance allowance, I think that's a great strategy, right? It's just make sure it's nothing that's going to, again, kind of falls over those four things that I had, right? Is if you offer an appearance allowance on this part, is the function of the vehicle still going to be safe? Is it going to be functional? Is it going to be durable? Maybe it won't be aesthetically pleasing, but maybe that's where you can waver a little bit on that.
Absolutely.
Great suggestion.
I like it. Well, I think this has been a very helpful segment. I learned some things from you, as always, Mike. You're a fountain
Thank you,
of
Ryan.
knowledge. And
You're very kind, brother. And
yeah,
just praying for everybody, and to stay sane. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be on this with you. And again, if I can help anybody, encourage anybody, just please let me know and do whatever we can to help people.
thanks again, Mike. Really appreciate you being here.
Love you, brother. God bless, man. Bye bye.